Have you ever had that unsettling feeling of perceiving something that no one else around you seems to notice? As if you were seeing through a layer of reality that remains invisible to others. This experience is not only disconcerting, but profoundly lonely. More and more people feel alienated amidst crowds, carrying perceptions and intuitions that find no echo in the shared world. Perhaps you yourself have felt this discomfort, this sense of inadequacy when trying to express something you see clearly, only to be met with blank stares or indifference. Kant's philosophy, with its seemingly impenetrable complexity, often heightens this sense of isolation. His concepts of perception, knowledge, and reality seem too distant from everyday experience, as if there were an insurmountable barrier between what he wrote and what we experience. Many of us carry a deep sense that we are insufficiently capable of comprehending these revolutionary ideas, condemned to remain on the surface of an ocean of wisdom. But imagine if we could not only understand what Kant really meant about our capacity for perception, but also apply that understanding to make sense of this unsettling experience of seeing what others cannot. By the end of this reflection, you will have a not just theoretical, but also a visceral understanding of how Kantian philosophy explains this universal human experience and, more importantly, how to navigate it without succumbing to the dangers it presents. The knowledge we will share will not only expand your intellectual understanding, but will fundamentally transform the way you interpret your own perceptions and communicate them to others. There is a quiet urgency in this understanding. For every moment we feel disconnected because of our unique perceptions, we miss opportunities for growth and genuine connection. Let us embark together on this journey of discovery, not as mere students of philosophy, but as human beings seeking to make sense of one of the most profoundly disconcerting experiences of consciousness. Kant revolutionized our understanding of how we know the world when he proposed that we have no direct access to things in themselves, but only to things as they appear to us through our forms of intuition and categories of understanding. This fundamental insight means that we all experience the world through particular lenses, cognitive structures that organize experience in specific ways. When you perceive something that others don't, you're not necessarily hallucinating or being irrational, but you may be operating with a different cognitive structure, a unique way of organizing and interpreting the sensory data we all receive. Kant's distinction between phenomenon and noumenon, between the world as it appears to us and the world as it truly is in itself, independent of our perception, helps us understand why these divergences in perception occur. We can never completely escape our subjective structures of knowledge to achieve a completely objective view of reality. This inherent limitation of human knowledge is both a consolation and a challenge, for it reminds us that the complete truth is always beyond our reach, but also that each perspective can contain valuable fragments of that unattainable truth. When you see patterns, connections, or implications that seem obvious to you but invisible to others, you're likely accessing aspects of reality that your unique cognitive structures allow you to see. It's as if each human mind is a different prism, decomposing the light of reality into slightly different spectrums, each revealing and concealing distinct aspects of the whole. The danger begins when we confuse our particular perception with the totality of truth. Kant warns us against dogmatism, this human tendency to absolutize our own limited perceptions and understandings, transforming partial insights into supposedly universal and indisputable truths. When we believe that our vision is the only correct one, we lose the epistemic humility that Kant so valued. This humility is not a peripheral virtue, but central to the Kantian philosophical project, as it recognizes the inherent limits of human reason. Dogmatism is particularly tempting when we truly see something that others do not, for the frustration of not being understood can easily transform into a sense of intellectual or spiritual superiority. We may begin to see ourselves as enlightened among the blind, possessing privileged access to truth that others, in their ignorance or obtuseness, cannot grasp. This stance not only further isolates us, but also violates the Kantian principle of respect for the rational autonomy of every human being. To treat others as incapable of grasping important truths is to treat them as less than fully developed rational beings, to instrumentalize them rather than recognize their inherent dignity as ends in themselves. I'm going to pause here and ask you directly, how many times have you felt this cognitive loneliness of perceiving something that seems invisible to others? This feeling of seeing beyond appearances, capturing patterns or meanings that simply aren't registered by others' consciousness. You're not alone. Many of us carry this silent restlessness, this feeling of being tuned into frequencies others don't. I'd love for you to share your experience in the comments. It could be something simple, like, "My biggest struggle with perceiving what others don't see is..." Your comment not only helps me create content more tailored to your real experiences, but also creates a community where others, who may be experiencing this same perceptual dissonance, can feel understood and less alone on their journey. It's through this honest exchange that we grow together. So please pause the video for a moment and share your experience, as your unique perspective can illuminate aspects of reality that I myself don't perceive. Kant's categorical imperative offers us a compass for navigating this perilous terrain. When we believe we see truths that others do not, we must ask ourselves, would we be willing to universalize our approach? Could we expect everyone to treat their personal insights the same way we treat ours? The answer to this question reveals much about the ethics of our actions based on unshared insights. If we expect others to seriously consider our perspectives, even when they are initially incomprehensible to them, we must extend the same epistemological courtesy to their views. The Kantian maxim to act according to principles we might will as universal laws obligates us to a form of cognitive reciprocity. We cannot reasonably demand openness to our perspectives while remaining closed to those of others. This does not mean that all perspectives are equally valid, a form of relativism that Kant would certainly reject. Rather, it means that all perspectives deserve initial consideration as potentially revealing aspects of truth, even when they initially seem mistaken or incomprehensible. Respect for the rational autonomy of others requires that we treat them as capable of recognizing the truth, even when they do not currently see it as we do. The Kantian distinction between theoretical and practical reason also illuminates our dilemma. Theoretical reason tells us what is, while practical reason guides us on what to do. When we perceive something that others do not, we face not only a theoretical question about the nature of reality, but also a practical question about how to act in the face of this perceptual divergence. Kantian wisdom, suggests that even when we cannot completely resolve our differences at the theoretical level, we can still find shared practical principles to guide our actions. We may not be able to make others see exactly what we see, but we can find common values and goals that transcend our perceptual differences. This is the beauty of Kantian ethics. It does not require theoretical unanimity, only mutual respect and commitment to principles that all could rationally accept. Thus, the fact that we see something that others do not does not absolve us of the obligation to seek moral common ground, a space of shared reasons where genuine dialogue can occur. One of the most profound aspects of Kantian thought is his conception of reflective judgment, explored primarily in his critique of judgment. Unlike determinative judgment, where we apply already established concepts to particular cases, reflective judgment seeks to find adequate concepts for experiences that have not yet been adequately categorized. When we see something that others do not see, we often engage in this type of reflective judgment, attempting to articulate new concepts or expand existing ones to account for perceptions that escape established categories. Kant saw this capacity for reflective judgment as one of the highest expressions of human freedom, our ability to transcend existing conceptual limits and create new forms of understanding. However, he also recognized that this creative freedom must be disciplined by the pursuit of universal communicability. It is not enough to create idiosyncratic concepts that only we understand. The true advancement of human knowledge requires that we can eventually communicate our unique perceptions in ways that others can, at least potentially, understand and validate. This tension between originality and communicability lies at the heart of the experience of seeing what others do not see. Kant himself lived this experience at a profound level. His Copernican revolution in philosophy, his radical proposal that objects should conform to our knowledge rather than the other way around, represented a vision that his contemporaries often failed to grasp. He was seeing something others did not, a new way of understanding the relationship between mind and world that resolved seemingly intractable philosophical problems. His response to this situation is instructive. Rather than simply declaring his vision and expecting others to accept it on its authority, he devoted years to carefully articulating his insights, building conceptual bridges between the familiar and the new, developing a language that could eventually communicate what initially seemed incommunicable. He recognized that seeing what others cannot see imposes a special responsibility, to work patiently to make the invisible visible, not through dogmatic declarations, but through careful argument and genuine consideration of others' objections. The danger of seeing what others don't also manifests itself on a social and political level. Kant was one of the first philosophers to clearly articulate the importance of the public use of reason, the need for spaces where different perspectives can be freely expressed and debated. In his famous essay, What is Enlightenment?, he argues that human progress depends on our courage to use our own understanding and share our perspectives, even when they challenge established orthodoxies. However, he also recognizes that this process must occur within a community of inquirers, where different views can correct and complement each other. When we believe we see truths that others don't, we may be tempted to bypass this communal process to impose our vision without subjecting it to public scrutiny. This temptation is particularly strong when our insight seems urgent or when others' lack of understanding frustrates us. But Kant reminds us that even our most compelling insights should ideally be validated through rational dialogue with others. Not because our individual perceptions are without value in themselves, but because they are inevitably partial and can be enriched and corrected by engaging with other perspectives. One of the most subtle and profound aspects of Kantian philosophy is its understanding of the antinomies of reason, those situations where human reason seems inevitably led to contradictory conclusions, when attempting to go beyond the limits of possible experience. This understanding offers us a valuable perspective on the phenomenon of seeing what others do not see. Sometimes, our unique perceptions place us in territories where contradictions seem inevitable, where different aspects of reality seem to point in incompatible directions. In these situations, the Kantian approach is not to dogmatically choose one side of the contradiction, nor to abandon reason completely, but to recognize the limits of our current understanding and use this awareness as a stimulus to seek higher syntheses. Seeing what others do not see can be a sign that we are operating at the frontiers of human knowledge, where established categories begin to disintegrate and new conceptual syntheses are necessary. This frontier position is both dangerous and potentially revealing. Kant's conception of rational faith also illuminates our condition. For Kant, there are certain ideas, such as freedom, the immortality of the soul, and the existence of God, that cannot be known theoretically, but that we can and even must postulate to make sense of our moral experience. These ideas are not knowledge in the strict sense, but represent a form of rational faith, a justified trust in realities that transcend empirical experience. Similarly, when we see something that others do not see, we are often operating in a space between knowledge and faith. We cannot conclusively prove the validity of our unique perceptions to others, but neither can we simply abandon them without betraying our own rationality. We are called to a form of rational trust in our own cognitive faculties, even while acknowledging their fallibility. The challenge is to maintain this trust without slipping into dogmatism, to be open to the possibility of error without falling into paralyzing skepticism. This delicate balance exemplifies what Kant called wisdom, the ability to navigate between dogmatic and skeptical extremes while maintaining both conviction and humility. Perhaps the greatest danger of seeing what others cannot see is the existential isolation that often accompanies this experience. When our most meaningful insights fail to resonate with the social world, we may begin to doubt not only those specific insights, but also our own sanity or belonging to the human community. Kant deeply recognized this social dimension of knowledge. While emphasizing the autonomy of individual reason, he also understood that the full development of human rationality occurs only in community with other rational beings. His conception of a kingdom of ends, where each rational being is treated as an end in itself and never merely as a means, points to an ideal community where different perspectives do not compete for dominance, but complement and enrich one another. When we see what others cannot see, our challenge is to find or create spaces where we can share these insights without demanding submission, where we can engage in genuine dialogue that respects both the integrity of our experience and the rational autonomy of others. This tension between individual perception and social validation is at the heart of many profound human experiences. Great innovators, visionary artists, and moral reformers often begin by seeing something others do not. They perceive possibilities, connections, or injustices that remain invisible to most of their contemporaries. The path they follow is rarely easy. Many are initially ridiculed, ignored, or persecuted for their unconventional views. Some eventually succeed in communicating their insights in ways that transform collective understanding, expanding the horizon of the visible for the entire community. Others remain isolated, misunderstood throughout their lives, perhaps only to be recognized posthumously, if at all. Kant himself experienced this trajectory. His critique of pure reason initially met with a lukewarm or hostile reception, with many contemporaries unable to grasp the depth and originality of his thought. It was only gradually, through subsequent clarifications and the work of sympathetic interpreters, that his revolutionary vision began to be widely appreciated and incorporated into philosophical thought. What this journey teaches us is that the process of translation between what we see individually and what can be recognized collectively is often long and arduous. It requires not only intellectual clarity, but also patience, perseverance, and a particular form of courage. The courage not only to maintain our convictions in the face of misunderstanding, but also to constantly revise them in light of new evidence and arguments. The patience not only to wait for others to eventually see what we see, but to create conceptual bridges that can facilitate this shared vision. This work of translation between the individual and the collective, between the currently visible and the potentially visible, is perhaps the most profound responsibility that comes with the privilege and burden of seeing what others do not yet see. There is a temporal dimension to this experiment that Kant captured in his philosophy of history. For him, human progress is neither linear nor guaranteed, but represents a possibility that depends on our collective efforts guided by the regulative ideals of reason. Similarly, when we see something that others do not, we are often operating in a different temporality, perceiving future possibilities or historical patterns that are not yet widely recognized. This temporal discrepancy is another source of the feeling of alienation that often accompanies unconventional perceptions. We may feel displaced in our own time, more aligned with a possible future that has not yet arrived, or with a past that has been forgotten or misinterpreted. The Kantian challenge here is to maintain orientation toward these regulative ideals without succumbing to naive utopianism or cynical despair. It is to recognize that the full realization of our deepest visions may never occur in our lifetime without this diminishing their value as guides for our present action. The experience of seeing what others cannot see also puts us in direct contact with the limits of language. Kant was deeply aware of how our linguistic concepts and categories shape what we can think and communicate. When our perceptions transcend established categories, we face not only the incomprehension of others, but also the inadequacy of our own conceptual tools. Part of our work, then, becomes the creative expansion of language, the articulation of new concepts, or the reconfiguration of existing ones to accommodate the previously inexpressible. This is a work that requires both logical rigor and poetic imagination, a combination that Kant himself exemplified in his work. His conceptual innovations, such as the distinction between phenomenon and noumenon, or between analytic and synthetic judgments, represented creative expansions of philosophical language that allowed the articulation of previously inexpressible insights. Similarly, when we see what others cannot see, We are often called upon to be not just observers, but creators of language, expanding the sayable to accommodate the previously ineffable. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the complexity of perceiving what others can't, know that you're not alone on this journey. The path to understanding the implications of Kantian philosophy on our unique perceptions doesn't have to be lonely or confusing. I invite you to subscribe to the channel and join this community of people who, like you, seek clarity amid the cognitive loneliness of seeing beyond the most obvious layers of reality. By subscribing, you'll receive weekly reflections that transform Kant's seemingly inaccessible concepts into practical tools for navigating this disconcerting experience of singular perception. We're not just studying philosophy. We're learning to honor our unique intuitions while maintaining the epistemic humility that Kant so valued. We're discovering how to communicate the seemingly incommunicable and how to find community even in our most solitary perceptions. Click the subscribe button now, not as an obligation, but as a gift for your journey of self-understanding. And if this content brought any clarity to this disorienting experience, please leave a like as a way to say we're together in this quest for balance between conviction and openness. Remember, understanding the danger and potential of seeing what others don't is not just an academic exercise. It's a way to cultivate genuine wisdom in a world where divergent perceptions often divide us rather than enrich us mutually.